The cold seared Lyra's lungs, a biting reminder of the betrayal that had brought her to this desolate place. Her blood, usually a comforting warmth beneath her skin, felt like ice, each pulse a drumbeat of dread. She stood on a raised platform, crudely fashioned from rough-hewn timber, illuminated by the harsh glow of strategically placed lanterns that cast long, grotesque shadows. Around her, the hushed murmurs of the assembled wolves from the northern shadow pack felt less like voices and more like the gnashing of teeth. She was a prize, a commodity, not a living, breathing being. Her old alpha, Ronan, stood at the edge of the platform, a smug, avaricious glint in his eyes. He had sold her for a debt she had no hand in creating, a burden he had foisted upon her without a moment's hesitation, without a shred of remorse. Her gaze swept across the faces below, seeking any hint of compassion, any flicker of recognition from her former packmates. There was none. Only judgment, curiosity, and the predatory glares of those who saw her as nothing more than a transaction. She was a pawn in a game of power and survival, her fate sealed by the decree of an alpha who valued silver more than the life of one of his own. Then he emerged from the shadows, a figure of formidable presence. Alpha Kalen, the whispered-about leader of the feared Ashwood pack. He moved with the quiet grace of a predator, his form towering, his shoulders broad beneath a cloak of dark, practical leather. The air around him seemed to thicken, charged with an unspoken authority that made even Alpha Ronan shift uncomfortably. His eyes, when they finally settled on Lyra, were the color of ancient storm clouds, deep, mysterious, and utterly unreadable. They held no warmth, no malice, just an intense, unsettling scrutiny that made her heart pound like a trapped bird against her ribs. He assessed her, from the tangle of her dark, unbound hair to the tips of her worn, muddy boots. A shiver, not entirely from the cold, ran down her spine. This was it, the moment her life truly ended, or perhaps began anew, albeit in a form she could scarcely imagine. Her breath hitched. He extended a hand, not to her, but to Alpha Ronan, accepting a rolled parchment that seemed to seal her doom. He murmured something, his voice a low rumble that did not carry to her ears, but the effect on Ronan was instantaneous. The older Alpha nodded, a nervous twitch in his jaw. Then Kalen turned back to her, his gaze unwavering, and for a fleeting instant she thought she saw something else there, something beyond the cold assessment, a flicker of something she couldn't quite decipher, a depth that hinted at other plans. And then he turned and strode away, leaving her suspended in the biting wind, a silent testament to her abandonment. Every soul, no matter how bruised, holds the potential for a strength it has yet to discover, a melody it is yet to sing. The scent of pine and damp earth clung to Lyra's worn cloak, a familiar comfort that did little to soothe the turmoil within her. For years, she had been an outcast in her own pack, the Riverbend clan. Born with a coat the color of twilight and eyes that shimmered with an unnatural silver, she had been deemed different from a young age. Not quite an omega, not quite a beta, she existed in a liminal space, a constant reminder of her unsuitability. Her gentle nature, her aversion to conflict, and her quiet disposition were seen as weaknesses in a pack that valued aggression and strength above all else. She was often tasked with the foraging, the mending, the quiet, unseen labor that kept the pack running, but never praised, never truly integrated. The whispers followed her like shadows, too soft, too strange, unfit for a mate. Her deep-seated fear of rejection had blossomed into a pervasive loneliness, a constant ache in her chest. She longed for connection, for a touch, a word of kindness, a place where she truly belonged. But the Riverbend clan offered none of it. They were a pack driven by ancient traditions and a dwindling territory. Their resources stretched thin, their tempers frayed. Alpha Ronan, a wolf whose ambition far outstripped his wisdom, had plunged them into a series of disastrous raids, racking up debts they could not pay. When the Alpha of the Northern Shadow Pack, a formidable and ruthless leader, demanded recompense for a raid gone wrong, Ronan had deliberated for a mere day before offering Lyra. "She is unique," he had explained, his voice oozing false concern during the tense negotiations. "A rare beauty, gentle, compliant. She will serve your Alpha well." Lyra, forced to stand by and listen, had felt a cold fury rise within her, quickly followed by a crushing wave of despair. She was being bartered like a piece of livestock, her worth measured only by the debt she could erase. Her protest, a small, choked sound, had been swiftly silenced by a harsh glare from Ronan's beta. No one had intervened. No one had defended her. She was a burden, easily shed. And so she was traded. Not for silver, not for land, but for a promise of future alliance and a cancellation of a significant debt. A chilling irony that her perceived worthlessness to her own pack made her valuable chattel to another. The journey from the Riverbend clan's forested lands to the Northern Shadow territory had been a blur of humiliation and terror. She was escorted by two grim-faced warriors, their silence more menacing than any threat. Each step away from the only home she had ever known, however unwelcoming, felt like a severance. Now she stood here, on this crude platform, under the unforgiving gaze of strangers, waiting for her new master. Her mind raced, conjuring horrors from the old tales her grandmother used to tell, of captured she-wolves forced into servitude, of lives devoid of joy, of spirits broken by cruelty. She had always sought escape in stories, in the quiet solitude of the forest, but now the terrifying reality was her only companion. Her hope, fragile as gossamer, was that she might merely be a servant, that her strangeness might protect her from anything worse. But even that hope felt like a luxury she could not afford. The Ashwood Pack's lands began where the Northern Shadow's barren hills gave way to ancient, towering forests. The air here was different, heavier, scented with old growth and something wilder, untamed. The Northern Shadow wolves had deposited Lyra at the agreed-upon border, a jagged line marked by a fallen, moss-covered monolith, then quickly retreated as if eager to be rid of her. She was alone, once more, a speck in a vast, silent wilderness. The Ashwood territory was rumored to be ancient, a place where the magic of the old ways still held sway. Legends spoke of powerful alphas and a pack fiercely loyal to their traditions, dwelling deep within the impenetrable woods. Lyra had heard whispers, too, of a curse that afflicted the Ashwood alpha lineage, a malady that left their souls restless, their hearts cold, and their destinies intertwined with the moon's darkest phases. She shivered, pulling her thin cloak tighter. It was a world she knew nothing about, a world far grander and more terrifying than the meager forests of the Riverbend clan. Hours passed. The sun began its slow descent, painting the sky in hues of bruised purple and fiery orange. Fear gnawed at her, a physical ache in her stomach. Had she been abandoned again? Was this another twisted joke? Just as despair threatened to overwhelm her, a sound, soft yet distinct, broke the silence. The snapping of twigs, the rustle of leaves. She turned, her heart leaping into her throat. 3 wolves emerged from the deepening gloom, their forms shifting fluidly from bipedal to quadrupeds with practiced ease. They were larger than any wolves she had ever seen, their fur dark, almost black, their eyes gleaming with an intelligent intensity that spoke of generations of primal strength. The one in front, a massive male with fur the color of obsidian, was unmistakably Alpha Kalen. Even in his wolf form, he exuded an aura of quiet power, a silent authority that commanded respect without a single growl. His eyes in wolf form were an even deeper, more piercing storm cloud gray, studying her with an unnerving calm. She froze, unable to move, unable to breathe. Her own wolf, usually timid and withdrawn, pressed against the walls of her mind, a whimper of pure terror. Kalen approached slowly, his movements deliberate, unhurried. He circled her once, his large head lowered, sniffing the air, taking in her scent. She could smell him too, pine, ancient stone, and something else, something uniquely masculine. And powerfully wolf, a scent that spoke of deep forests and hidden strength. It was intoxicating, primal, and utterly terrifying. He stopped directly in front of her, his massive head level with her chest. His breath, warm and earthy, fanned across her face. She closed her eyes, bracing herself for whatever was to come. A growl, a snap, a command? Instead, she felt a soft nudge against her arm, a gentle pressure that urged her forward. She opened her eyes. Kalen had shifted back, not completely, but enough to hold a human form while retaining the raw power of his wolf. His face was a chiseled mask, high cheekbones, a strong jaw, a mouth that was a firm line. His dark hair was swept back from his brow, revealing a faint scar just above his left eye, a testament to past battles. He still wore the dark leather cloak, now draped over his powerful frame. Come. His voice was a low, resonant rumble, a sound that vibrated through her bones. It was not a question, but a command, though devoid of any harshness. The journey is long. She merely nodded, too overwhelmed to speak. The fear had not dissipated, but something else had joined it, a reluctant curiosity. His other plans remained a mystery, cloaked in the quiet authority of his presence. She followed him and his two pack members into the depths of the forest, the silence of their journey punctuated only by the rustle of leaves and the distant hoot of an owl. Her heart, against all odds, held a tiny, stubborn ember of hope. The Ashwood Pack stronghold was not a series of scattered dens like her old packs, but a veritable fortress carved into the very heart of the mountains. Massive stone gates, adorned with intricate carvings of howling wolves and ancient symbols, stood guard at the entrance to a winding mountain pass. Torches flickered along the path, casting a warm, inviting glow that seemed to defy the chill of the night. As they approached, the scent of wood smoke, savory cooking, and many wolves filled the air, a stark contrast to the desolate emptiness of the Northern Shadows territory. This was a thriving community, not a struggling remnant. Inside the gates, the scene was one of bustling activity. Wolves in various stages of shift moved purposefully, some carrying timber, others tending to roaring fires, children playing in the central clearing. The air vibrated with a sense of purpose and belonging that Lyra had never witnessed. She felt a profound sense of awe, mixed with an old, familiar pang of inadequacy. These were powerful, proud wolves. What place could she, the unwanted, the sold, have among them? Kalen led her through the labyrinthine passages of the stronghold, carved deep into the living rock. The walls were smooth, etched with more ancient symbols, and glowing with a faint internal light from embedded crystalline formations. It was beautiful, awe-inspiring, and utterly alien. He stopped before a heavy wooden door. Simple in its construction compared to the grandeur surrounding it. "This will be your den," he said, his voice still low, but with a hint of something that might have been consideration. "You will be provided with whatever you need. Food will be brought to you. Rest." He opened the door. Inside, a small, cozy chamber awaited. A simple but comfortable cot covered with thick furs, a small glowing crystal on a table, providing soft light, and the scent of lavender and fresh linen. It was more than she had ever had in her old pack, where she often slept on rough straw. "Thank you," she managed, her voice a reedy whisper. Kalen merely nodded, his gaze unwavering. We will speak more tomorrow." He turned to leave, and for a moment Lyra felt a familiar wave of panic, the fear of being left alone, discarded. But then he paused, and his eyes, those deep, inscrutable storm clouds, met hers. "You are safe here, Lyra." And with that he was gone, the heavy door closing softly behind him, leaving her in the quiet sanctuary of her new den. She sank onto the furs, the events of the past days crashing down upon her. The humiliation, the fear, the long journey, the sheer alienness of this new place. Tears, hot and silent, finally streamed down her face. She was safe, he had said, but was she truly? What did safety mean for a wolf who had been sold like a slave? What were these other plans he spoke of? She curled into a ball, clutching the soft furs, the scent of lavender a strangely comforting presence in her despair. She was here, in the heart of the Ashwood pack, a prisoner of circumstance, but perhaps, just perhaps, a recipient of a strange, unexpected mercy. The bitter wind of the Northern Shadows territory still clawed at her, a phantom sensation against her skin. Lyra stood on the raised platform, the rough timber digging into her bare feet, her hands bound loosely at her wrists, more a symbolic gesture of ownership than a true restraint. Alpha Ronan, his face a mask of greed and triumph, stood beside her, his hand resting possessively on her shoulder, a gesture that made her skin crawl. The lanterns cast their harsh, unforgiving light, illuminating the faces of the assembled wolves, their eyes gleaming with a mix of morbid curiosity and cold indifference. She was a spectacle, an exchange. Her heart hammered against her ribs, a frantic bird trapped in a cage. Her entire being screamed for escape, for a single moment of dignity. But there was none to be found. Then he emerged from the deeper shadows, Alpha Kalen. His presence was a palpable force, silencing the whispers, drawing all eyes. He walked with a silent, measured stride, his dark cloak billowing around him, making him seem even larger, more imposing. When his gaze found hers, it was like the sudden drop in temperature, sharp and piercing, revealing nothing. He was a force of nature, untamed and powerful, and she was merely a leaf caught in his current. He extended a hand, not to her, but to Alpha Ronan, who eagerly thrust a rolled parchment into Kalen's grasp. The parchment, the contract, the symbol of her sale. Kalen's fingers brushed Ronan's, a brief, dismissive contact. He unrolled the document, his eyes scanning the words, his expression unreadable. Ronan babbled something, a hurried explanation about Lyra's unique qualities, her compliant nature. Lyra's stomach churned. She squeezed her eyes shut, wishing the earth would swallow her whole. When she opened them again, Kalen's gaze was fixed on her once more. This time it held a profound intensity, a depth that seemed to penetrate her very soul. He made a subtle, almost imperceptible gesture with his free hand, a slight dip of his chin, a silent command to Ronan. Ronan nodded, a nervous twitch in his jaw. Then Kalen turned, his back to her, and strode away without a backward glance, disappearing into the darkness from which he had emerged, leaving her suspended in the biting wind, a silent testament to her abandonment. The wind howled a lament through the Ashwood peaks, a mournful cry that echoed the sorrow in Lyra's heart. It had been weeks since her arrival, weeks spent in a gilded cage. Alpha Kalen's initial pronouncement of "you are safe here" had proved true in the most superficial sense. She had a comfortable den, ample food, and was free to roam certain parts of the stronghold, always under the watchful eyes of the pack. But she was still a prisoner, albeit one treated with an unnerving civility. The uncertainty of her purpose, the other plans Kalen hinted at, gnawed at her, breeding a quiet desperation. Her days were spent in a rhythm of solitary chores, mending pack clothes, helping in the kitchens, caring for the youngest pups when the elders were overwhelmed. She moved through the pack, a silent shadow, always observing, always learning, always feeling the weight of her outsider status. The Ashwood wolves, while not openly hostile, were wary. Their stares were curious, sometimes tinged with suspicion. They knew she was bought, not born, and that marked her. Among them, an older she-wolf, Ilara, with a kind face etched with wisdom and a comforting scent of herbs, offered her the most solace. Ilara was the pack's healer, her den filled with the fragrance of dried plants and the murmur of ancient incantations. She treated Lyra not as a slave, but as a newcomer deserving of basic human kindness. "You carry a quiet strength, child," Ilara had once observed, her eyes surprisingly perceptive. "Let it not be swallowed by shadows." But there were others. Beta Lyra, a formidable she-wolf with a warrior's build and a sharp, discerning gaze, was openly distrustful. Her cold glances followed Lyra everywhere, her posture stiff with unspoken disapproval. "She's an outsider, Kaelin," Lyra had once overheard her saying. To the alpha, her voice low and tense. "What purpose does she truly serve here?" Gamma Rorick, a burly male with a booming laugh that never reached his eyes, treated Lyra with a condescending pity that felt worse than Lyra's disdain. He saw her as fragile, a burden, a reminder of a strange debt paid. Alpha Kaelin himself remained an enigma. He would visit her den once a week, his visits brief, almost ritualistic. He would inquire about her comfort, her needs, but their conversations never delved deeper. He spoke little, observed much, and always left her with the unsettling feeling that she was a puzzle he was slowly, meticulously solving. His presence was overwhelming, his scent a dizzying mix of earth and power, a constant reminder of his absolute authority. She feared him, yes, but also found herself drawn to the quiet intelligence in his storm cloud eyes, the unspoken burdens she sometimes glimpsed there. One crisp morning, as Lyra tended to the small garden outside the healer's den, her fingers brushing against dew-kissed leaves, she heard a commotion. A young pup, no older than 5, had wandered too close to the edge of the stronghold's protective barrier and stumbled, twisting its ankle. The pup's cries, sharp with pain and fear, cut through the usual hum of pack life. The mother, a frantic she-wolf, rushed to its side, but the pup refused to be touched, whimpering and biting in its distress. Ilara, her hands full with a complex poultice for an ailing elder, called for assistance. Without thinking, Lyra moved. Her own wolf, usually so timid, surged forward, a protective instinct overriding her usual hesitation. She approached the distressed pup slowly, her movements gentle, her eyes soft. The pup's mother growled, a warning, but Lyra didn't falter. She knelt, her voice a low, soothing murmur, the ancient lullabies her own mother had sung to her, now flowing unbidden from her lips. She didn't try to touch the pup immediately. Instead, she sat a little distance away, emitting a calming scent, a non-threatening presence. Slowly, tentatively, the pup's cries lessened. Its eyes, wide with pain, found hers. She continued to hum, a soft, ethereal melody that seemed to weave through the very air. Minutes crawled by. The pup's whimpers softened to sniffles. Lyra edged closer, offering her hand, palm open, a gesture of peace. The pup hesitated, then leaned into her touch, its tiny head resting against her fingers. Only then did Lyra carefully inspect the ankle, her touch feather-light, expertly assessing the injury. It was a sprain, not a break. Ilara arrived, observing the scene with a knowing smile. "Well done, child," she praised, her voice warm. Beta Lyra, however, stood at a distance, her expression unreadable, a flicker of something resembling surprise in her sharp eyes. Later that day, as Lyra returned to her den, she found Alpha Kaelin waiting. He stood in the doorway, his silhouette framed by the glowing crystals of the corridor. Her heart skipped a beat. Had she overstepped? Was she to be punished? "You possess a rare gift, Lyra," he said, his voice a low thrum that sent shivers down her spine. The pup's fear faded in your presence. That is not common." She looked at her hands, still smelling faintly of pine and the pup's soft fur. I just wanted to help," she whispered, her gaze not meeting his. "The Riverbend clan called it weakness," he observed, almost to himself. "We call it strength." His words hung in the air, a revelation. Her perceived flaw, her gentle nature, was valued here. It was a turning point, a tiny crack in the formidable wall of her fear and loneliness. A seed of hope, delicate yet tenacious, began to sprout within her. Perhaps, just perhaps, Kaylin's other plans were not to exploit her, but to understand her. The next morning, Kaylin sought her out again, not in her den, but in the central hall. He was surrounded by his council, including Beta Lyra and Gamma Rorik. Her stomach tightened with apprehension. "Lyra," he announced, his voice carrying through the hall, "we face a dilemma. The young ones have been struggling with a strange ailment, a restless sleep and disturbing visions. Ilara's usual remedies have been less effective." He paused, his gaze sweeping across the faces of his council, then settling on Lyra. "Your calming presence yesterday was noted. I believe your unique gift, your unusual resonance, may be beneficial. I ask you to assist Ilara with the ailing pups." A ripple of murmurs spread through the council. Beta Lyra's jaw tightened, her eyes flashing with a mix of defiance and unease. Gamma Rorik scoffed, a low, dismissive sound. "Alpha, with all due respect," Lyra began, "she is an outsider. We know little of her true abilities or her intentions. To entrust her with our young, it seems a great risk." Kaylin's gaze remained steady, unwavering. "Her intentions, Lyra, are to help. Her abilities were demonstrated yesterday, and this pack is in need. Are you suggesting we refuse aid from any source simply because it is unfamiliar?" His voice, though calm, held an edge of steel. Lyra fell silent, her defiance simmering beneath the surface. Lyra, stunned, felt a surge of conflicting emotions. Fear, yes, but also a fierce protectiveness for the vulnerable pups, and a surprising thrill of being seen, truly seen, for the first time. "I will do my best, Alpha," she said, her voice clear and firm, surprising even herself. Ilara smiled warmly, her approval evident. "Come, child," she said, beckoning Lyra. "Let us see what wonders we can weave together." Over the following weeks, Lyra spent her days in Ilara's den, learning the ancient ways of healing and contributing her unique gift. She would sit with the ailing pups, her mere presence a balm to their fevered minds. She would hum, just as she had to the injured pup, and tell them soft stories, tales of brave little wolves and kind forest spirits. Her soft touch, her calming scent, and her gentle voice worked a quiet magic. The pups, once restless and plagued by nightmares, began to sleep more soundly, their feverish visions fading. Her growing bond with the pups and their slow but steady recovery chipped away at the pack's skepticism. The parents, initially wary, began to offer her grateful smiles and even small tokens of appreciation, a perfectly ripe berry, a smooth, beautiful riverstone. Even Beta Lyra's gaze softened, though only slightly, when she saw Lyra soothing a particularly distraught pup. One evening, as the moon climbed high, casting silver light through the healer's den window, Kaylin found Lyra sitting by a sleeping pup, her hand gently stroking its fur. He entered silently, his presence a comforting warmth rather than an oppressive weight. "The elders believe it is your unique resonance that helps them," he said, his voice a whisper. "Your wolf's song is pure, untainted by the harshness of the world. It soothes the afflicted soul." Lyra looked up at him, her silver eyes reflecting the moonlight. "My old pack found my wolf strange, too quiet, too gentle." Kalen knelt beside her, his powerful frame surprisingly graceful. Some packs value only brute force. They are blind to other forms of strength. Your wolf is a beacon, Lyra, a source of calm and healing. That is a strength few possess. He reached out, not quite touching her, but his hand hovered near hers, a gesture of profound respect. My pack, we have faced much hardship. A darkness has settled upon us, a curse that leaves us vulnerable. Your gift may be the light we need. His words ignited a spark within her, a realization that transcended her fear. He hadn't bought her for servitude or for a mate bond. He had bought her for her essence, her unique being. He had seen a value in her that her own family had discarded. The other plans were not to break her, but to heal his pack, and in doing so, perhaps to heal her too. The admission of a curse, spoken in the hushed intimacy of the moonlit den, deepened the connection between them. It was a secret, weighty, and ancient, laid bare before her. Kalen's vulnerability, however slight, was a powerful bridge between them. A few days later, a communal hunt was organized, a rare event for a pack still recovering from an unspoken affliction. Beta Lyra, leading a group of younger warriors, was tasked with ranging farther than usual into the contested hunting grounds that bordered the territory of the hostile Stonefang pack. Lyra, for the first time, was invited to join, not as a hunter, but to tend to any injured animals or wolves, a testament to her growing acceptance. The hunt went well, too well. As the sun began to dip below the horizon, the Ashwood hunters had secured a magnificent elk, but their success drew unwanted attention. From the dense thicket, a growl ripped
through the air, followed by another and another. The Stonefang pack. Their numbers were greater, their intentions hostile. "Leave the kill," Lyra commanded, her voice sharp with urgency. "Retreat!" But it was too late. The Stonefang wolves, their fur matted and snarling, surged forward. A brutal skirmish erupted. Lyra, caught in the terrifying chaos, saw Beta Lyra engaged with a hulking Stonefang warrior, their forms a blur of teeth and claws. Lyra, though formidable, was outnumbered. Another Stonefang wolf circled, poised to attack her from behind. Without a moment's hesitation, Lyra shifted. Her body contorted, her bones reshaping with a painful, exhilarating rush. Her dark fur, like twilight, bristled, and her silver eyes glowed with an intensity she had never before unleashed. Her wolf, usually so timid, now surged with a primal energy, a fierce protectiveness. She darted forward, placing herself between Lyra and the incoming attacker. She let out a snarl, a deep, resonant sound that surprised even herself, a sound that carried the raw, untamed essence of her unique wolf. The Stonefang wolf, taken aback by this unexpected defiance from a smaller, unfamiliar she-wolf, hesitated. That moment of surprise was all Lyra needed. With a powerful lunge, she drove her opponent back, forcing the Stonefang wolves to regroup. Kalen, who had been ranging ahead with his own hunting party, appeared as if summoned by the very chaos. His massive black wolf form tore through the trees, a whirlwind of raw power. He saw Lyra, a defiant shadow wolf, standing guard over his beta, her silver eyes blazing. A flicker of something profound, pride, recognition, crossed his face. He let out a roar, a sound that shook the very ground, and charged into the fray. The arrival of the Ashwood Alpha, coupled with Lyra's unexpected courage, turned the tide. The Stonefang wolves, outmatched, retreated, their snarls fading into the forest. Breathing heavily, Lyra shifted back, her heart still pounding. Lyra approached her, her expression no longer one of distrust, but of grudging respect. You saved my life," she said, her voice hoarse. "Thank you, Lyra." Kalen shifted back, his powerful frame still radiating danger, but his eyes, when they met Lyra's, were no longer inscrutable. They held a depth of emotion she hadn't seen before, a silent acknowledgement of her bravery, her loyalty. "You faced them without hesitation," he said, his voice a low rumble. "You are truly one of us now, Lyra." His words, simple yet profound, resonated deep within her soul. One of us. It was more than an acceptance, it was an embrace. The ghost of rejection from her past began to recede, replaced by the warmth of true belonging. This was the turning point. She had fought for this pack, not as a bought chattel, but as a willing protector. And in doing so, she had found her place, not just in the Ashwood clan, but in Kaelin's heart. The bond between them, once a fragile thread of curiosity and necessity, now tightened. Intertwined with respect, admiration, and a silent, undeniable promise of something more. The air in the Ashwood stronghold crackled with an intensity that had nothing to do with the hearth fires. Kaelin had summoned a full council meeting, an event usually reserved for the gravest of matters. Lyra, now more than just an assistant healer, was present, sitting beside Alara. The respect in the gazes of the council members, even bade Alara, was palpable. Her courage during the Stonefang skirmish, coupled with the continued healing of the pups, had finally cemented her place. Kaelin stood before them, his powerful frame radiating a silent gravity. "The time for secrecy is over," he began, his voice resonating through the stone chamber. "The curse that plagues our pack, the one that has stolen our sleep and weakened our young, is growing stronger. It is an ancient malady, tied to a rogue spirit of discord that feeds on fear and division. It weakens our connection to the ancestors, making our shifts more difficult, our senses duller, and our dreams haunted." A murmur rippled through the council. The burden of this curse had been a heavy shadow over the Ashwood pack for generations, but never had Kaelin spoken of it so openly, so directly. "Ilara and Lyra have brought us hope," Kaelin continued, his gaze finding Lyra's, a silent acknowledgement of her crucial role. Lyra's unique resonance, her ability to calm and soothe, has proven to be anathema to the spirit's influence. It retreats from her light. Ilara stepped forward, her gentle voice gaining authority. "The ancient texts speak of a ritual," she explained, "a ritual to banish such a spirit. It requires a powerful source of untainted spirit, a heart of pure resonance to draw the discord from the land and bind it. And it requires a bond, a true mate bond, to anchor that resonance to the pack forever." The chamber fell silent, the weight of her words heavy in the air. A true mate bond. Lyra's heart thudded against her ribs. She understood now. Kaelin's other plans. He hadn't bought her to be his mate out of desire, but out of necessity, out of a desperate hope to save his pack. The truth, while validating her importance, also brought a fresh wave of vulnerability. Was her value still only in what she could do for them, not who she was? Before Lyra could process this, a growl ripped through the tense silence. Alpha Ronan, her former alpha, stood in the doorway of the council chambers, flanked by two of his grim warriors. His eyes, small and avaricious, swept over the assembled Ashwood wolves, then settled on Lyra with a predatory gleam. "I have come to reclaim what is mine," he bellowed, his voice jarring and unwelcome. "My debt to the Northern Shadow Pack has been paid. The terms of the trade were clear. Lyra was to serve Alpha Kaelin until such a time as my debt was settled. It is settled. She belongs." To the Riverbend clan once more. Chaos erupted. Ashwood wolves surged forward, growling, ready to defend their alpha and their new healer. Kaelin, however, held up a hand, silencing them. His eyes, cold and dangerous, fixed on Ronan. "You speak of terms, Ronan," Kaelin said, his voice dangerously low. "But you forget one crucial detail. Lyra was not simply traded, she was sold. And a purchased wolf by ancient law becomes property. I own her, and she has chosen to remain.
Chosen? Ronan scoffed, his face twisting into a sneer. As if a purchased she-wolf has a choice. She is chattel, and I have come to collect my chattel or demand a price she is worth. Lyra stepped forward, her heart hammering, but her gaze resolute. This was her moment, her agency. I am not chattel, Ronan, she said, her voice clear and strong, resonating through the room. And I was never truly yours. You cast me aside, sold me for your own failings. I found my worth here, a purpose you never allowed me. I choose to stay with the Ashwood pack. They are my pack now. Ronan's eyes narrowed, his face contorted in a sneer. You defy your alpha? Your own blood? You are a traitor, girl, and you will pay for your insolence. He lunged, a desperate, pathetic attempt to seize her, to reassert his control through force. But Kaelin moved faster. With a speed that belied his massive frame, he intercepted Ronan, grabbing him by the arm. His grip was like iron, his eyes blazing with a feral, protective fury Lyra had never witnessed. You lay a hand on one of my pack, Ronan, and you will learn what true defiance means, Kaelin growled, his voice a guttural rumble that shook the very foundations of the chamber. He flung Ronan backwards, sending him sprawling on the stone floor. Ronan scrambled to his feet, fear now replacing his arrogance. He looked around wildly, seeing the furious faces of the Ashwood wolves. He had underestimated Kaelin, underestimated the bond Lyra had forged. This is not over, he shrieked, then turned and fled, his warriors scrambling after him, disappearing back into the night. A profound silence filled the chamber. All eyes turned to Lyra. Her heart was still racing, but a thrilling sense of triumph surged through her. She had faced her past, rejected her tormentor, and chosen her own future. Kaelin turned to her, his gaze intense, searching. The ritual, he said, his voice softer now, almost a question. It requires a willing heart, a true mate bond to ground your resonance. I did not buy you for this, Lyra. I bought you to save you from a cruel fate. But now I ask you, will you be my Luna? Will you anchor your light to this pack, not out of obligation, but out of choice? Lyra looked into his storm cloud eyes, seeing not just the alpha, but the wolf burdened by his pack's suffering, the man who had offered her refuge and slowly, painstakingly revealed her worth. She saw his pain, his hope, and a deep, quiet affection that had blossomed between them, a slow-burn romance born of shared purpose and mutual respect. She saw the years of loneliness, the feeling of being undervalued, melting away in the warmth of his gaze. She had desired a true mate, a deep connection beyond superficiality, and here it was, born in the most unexpected way. Yes, she whispered, her voice choked with emotion. Yes, Kaelin, I will. A wave of relief and joy washed over the council. Beta Lyra, for the first time, offered Lyra a genuine, heartfelt smile. The pack had found its Luna, its healer, its hope. The ritual was set for the next full moon. The entire Ashwood pack gathered in the central cavern, the ancient symbols on the walls glowing brighter than ever before. Ilara led the ceremony, her voice chanting old words that vibrated with power. Lyra stood beside Kaelin, dressed in simple white furs, her silver eyes shining. The pack formed a circle around them, their wolves in various stages of shift, their collective energy a hum of anticipation. Kaelin shifted, his massive black wolf form radiating strength and unwavering devotion. Lyra, her heart overflowing with love and belonging, shifted too. Her twilight-colored wolf stood tall and proud, her silver eyes an incandescent beacon. She felt the ancient magic of the land, the collective spirit of the Ashwood pack, flow into her and through her into Kaelin, binding them together. As their snouts met, a surge of raw energy erupted, a brilliant light that pulsed from them, pushing back the shadows, banishing the lingering chill of the spirit of discord. The curse, centuries old, began to recede, dissolving into the light, its power broken by the untainted resonance of Lyra's wolf and the steadfast love of Kaelin. The pack howled, a joyous, triumphant sound that echoed through the mountains, a celebration of their liberation. The bond between Lyra and Kaelin was sealed, not by a contract of sale, but by choice, by love, and by a shared destiny. Lyra, once the unwanted, the sold, had found her true pack, her true mate, and her true self. Years had passed since the ritual that had banished the curse from the Ashwood pack. The stronghold, once shadowed by a pervasive gloom, now hummed with a vibrant, palpable energy. The pups grew strong, their sleep peaceful, their dreams filled with the joyous howls of their ancestors rather than the whispers of discord. The land itself seemed to flourish, the forests richer, the hunting grounds more bountiful, as if responding to the renewed spirit of its protectors. Luna Lyra, no longer a quiet shadow, moved through the pack with a serene confidence. Her silver eyes, once downcast, now met every gaze with warmth and genuine connection. She had embraced her role as Luna, not merely as Kaelin's mate, but as a vital heart of the pack. Her unique resonance continued to be a source of comfort and healing, her touch a balm, her voice a soothing melody for any wolf struggling with doubt or fear. Elara, now more of an honored elder, often spoke of Lyra's pure spirit, a rare gift that had brought the Ashwood clan back from the brink. Beta Lyra, once her sternest critic, had become one of her most trusted advisors and fiercest protectors. They often shared private moments, discussing pack matters, or simply enjoying the quiet camaraderie of two strong she-wolves. Gamma Rorick, his booming laugh now genuine and kind, often sought Lyra's advice on matters of pack morale, deeply respectful of her ability to bridge divides and soothe tensions. Kaelin, her alpha and her mate, still possessed his formidable presence, but the coldness that had once veiled his eyes was gone, replaced by a deep, enduring warmth. He would often watch Lyra from afar, a soft, private smile on his lips as she interacted with the pack, knowing that she was not just his Luna, but the very soul of their thriving community. Their bond was a tapestry woven with mutual respect, profound understanding, and an unyielding love that had grown from the most unlikely of circumstances. Their den, once a quiet sanctuary for a lonely captive, now resonated with the quiet joy of a truly unified pair. They often sat by the fire, his large hand gently clasping hers, sharing stories of their day, or simply existing in comfortable silence, their wolves resting peacefully within their minds. Lyra, the she-wolf who had been sold to settle a debt, had not only found her freedom, but had claimed a destiny far grander than any she could have imagined. She was not defined by her past rejection, but by her chosen present, by the love she gave and received, and by the profound sense of belonging she now held in her heart. She was a testament to the truth that every soul, no matter how bruised, holds the potential for a strength it has yet to discover, a melody it is yet to sing. Her pack had sold her to settle a debt, but the alpha buyer, indeed, had had other plans not for ownership, but for partnership, for healing, and for a love that would forever echo through the ancient forests of the Ashwood clan. She was home, she was loved, and she was free.